Do you know the chill that runs down your spine when you realize your partner does not just disrespect you, but sees you as inanimate furniture? It is not a sudden discovery. It is 1,000 small cuts. For me, the final cut came on a damp Tuesday night in Chicago, in the marble kitchen I chose but he paid for. This is how I turned his contempt into my greatest asset. Never tell a forensic accountant she just plays with numbers. You will not like the final audit of your life. My name is Maya. I am 38 years old, and I hunt for ghosts in spreadsheets. I am a forensic accountant, the person companies hire when they suspect millions have vanished into thin air. I find the digital trails, the hidden ledgers, and the lies people tell themselves about money. I work from home, in a glass-walled office that overlooks a meticulously manicured Chicago suburb, a life curated and paid for by my husband. My husband, Declan, is 42. He is the handsome, charismatic chief financial officer at Aperture Logistics, a rising star in the shipping world. He exudes success, from his perfectly tailored suits to the dismissive way he treats the waitstaff at expensive restaurants. That Tuesday evening, the air in our kitchen felt heavy and damp, pressurized by the coming storm and an unspoken tension. The kitchen itself was a monument to Declan's success, gleaming stainless steel, dark wood, and a sprawling marble island that felt as cold as a morgue slab under my forearms. I was reviewing the joint credit card statement on my tablet, a mundane monthly task, when I saw it. It was not a massive charge, not at first glance. It was a hotel bill, an expensive one, the kind of place where a club sandwich from room service costs $60. The charge was from a boutique hotel in the city, but Declan had no business in the city last week. No meetings, no conferences. I knew his calendar intimately. I used to manage it. Declan, I said, keeping my voice level. He was scrolling through his phone, barely present. There is a charge here from the Viceroy. Were you in town last Thursday? He did not look up. System glitch. Must be. I will have my assistant handle it. It does not look like a glitch, I said, pushing the tablet across the cold marble toward him. It is fully processed. Nearly $800. He sighed, an exaggerated sound of annoyance, and finally placed his phone face down. He glanced at the tablet, then swiped it away. It is handled. Maya. A corporate expense that hit the wrong card. It is fine. He turned back to his phone, the universal signal for conversation over. But something in his casual dismissal felt practiced. It felt like a lie. Declan, we are supposed to be watching our spending. We talked about this. That got his attention. He looked up, but the man I married was gone. In his place was the CFO, the one who eviscerated junior analysts for rounding errors. Our spending, he said, his voice laced with amusement. Maya, I watch my spending. You just benefit. He gestured around the cavernous kitchen. How much are you making from that little job at home? Enough to cover the gas for your SUV. Maya. The air left my lungs. My little job was the career I had systematically throttled. I had been on the partner track at one of the largest accounting firms in the country. I gave it up. I gave it up to support his rise, to manage our move to Chicago for his big break at Aperture, to be the flexible one. We did not have children, but that had been the agreement I would step back so he could surge forward. My high-stakes, high-stress career became a quiet freelance business, something to keep me occupied while he built an empire. My blood did not just run cold, it froze. I tried to keep my composure, to revert to the facts, just like in an audit. My skills are valuable. Declan. What I do is highly specialized. Declan actually laughed. It was not the warm, enveloping laugh I fell in love with a decade ago. It was a sharp, cruel bark of derision. Oh, God. Maya, stop, he said, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. You are adorable. You just play with numbers on a spreadsheet. You are a bookkeeper. Let's be honest. He leaned forward, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial, condescending whisper, the one he used right before the kill shot. You would not survive 1 week alone without me. Not in this house. Not with this life. You would be lost. The words hung in the sterile air between us, stark and absolute. He believed it. He truly believed I was nothing more than an expensive pet he had rescued, a piece of decorative furniture. He had forgotten who I was, what I was capable of. I felt the shift inside me. It was not sadness. It was not anger. It was the clean, cold click of a switch. It was the electric hum I feel when a balance sheet refuses to balance. The adrenaline rush when I find the first thread of a complex fraud. He had just presented me with the ultimate discrepancy. I looked at him. I let my face soften. I even managed a small, self-deprecating smile. "You're right," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "That's silly of me. I am sure it is just a system glitch." He smiled, satisfied, and picked up his phone, his victory complete. He had put me back in my box. That night, I did not sleep, while Declan snored beside me, radiating the scent of expensive whiskey. I sat in my home office. I bypassed the family computer and powered up my encrypted work laptop. I opened a new, secure file. I began a new audit. The subject, the life of Declan. I started where any good audit begins, with the bank statements. I ran our joint accounts through my own proprietary analysis software, the same platform I use to track sophisticated corporate malfeasance. I was not just looking for what was spent. I was looking for the how and the when. I was looking for the narrative. The Viceroy Hotel charge was not a glitch. My software flagged it instantly, connected by date and amount to a different charge 5 weeks prior, coded as client entertainment, and another one a month before that, masked as strategic consulting. It was a pattern. Monthly, like clockwork, for the past 6 months. The same amount, always routed through a different merchant category code. My hands grew very still on the keyboard. He was layering. It was a basic, clumsy technique used to hide recurring expenses from a cursory review. It was a trick I teach to first-year associates. He was using a concealment method from Accounting 101 on me. The insult was sharper than the infidelity. The arrogance of it. He did not just think I was a kept woman. He thought I was stupid. His personal email was the next logical step. We did not share passwords, but I did not need to. I knew his digital hygiene was sloppy. I went to the login page, typed his email address, and clicked Forgot Password. The security question popped up. "What was the name of your first pet?" I almost laughed. Buster. The name of the golden retriever he had 20 years ago, the one whose picture was still on his desk. He had never changed it. A new password link was in my inbox seconds later. I logged in. His personal inbox was sterile, mostly corporate newsletters and alumni spam. But Declan was arrogant, not organized. He did not delete things. I found a folder labeled JV Projects. My stomach tightened. JV. I opened it. The first few emails were from Juliet Vance, the 45-year-old ice-blonde CEO of Aperture Logistics. They were professional, dated 6 months back. "Declan, we need to discuss the new quarter's projections privately." "Declan, let's meet off-site to go over the CapEx report." Then the tone shifted. "Last night was inspiring. Let's act fast on our project. The asset shift is complete for the quarter. We're clear. Confirming the transfer to the buffer account. You were brilliant." My vision tunneled. This was not a panicked, messy office fling. This was a conspiracy. The emails were not love letters. They were meeting minutes. They discussed asset shifting, Delaware holding companies, and parallel ledgers. They were not just sleeping together. They were stealing together. This was not an affair. It was a long con embezzlement, and my husband and his CEO were the main players. They were systematically gutting Aperture Logistics from the inside. I needed the source data. Declan was obsessive about backing up his work. He was terrified of losing anything, a digital hoarder. I knew he had a personal cloud account, separate from the company servers, where he kept what he considered his files. The password was the same as his email. I found it in less than a minute. A folder labeled Aperture Board Decks. It contained all the polished, sunny presentations for the board of directors, showing healthy profits and manageable debt. And right next to it, a folder he had tried to hide, simply named Internal. I clicked it. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. There it was. The second set of books. It was all there. The real books. The ones that showed the truth. I saw the millions siphoned off through ghost invoices to a shell corporation. I saw the inflated executive bonuses, including his own, that were being funded by draining the employee pension fund. I saw the real profit margins, which were razor thin, versus the robust ones he presented to the board. He and Juliet were not just skimming, they were strip mining the company. I stared at the glowing screen, the two sets of ledgers open side by side, the lie and the truth. I recognized the immediate danger. If I exposed the affair, it would be messy. He would get fired, lose his golden parachute, and be humiliated. But he and Juliet would still have their stolen millions, tucked away in buffer accounts I could not trace without more time. They would just sail off into the sunset, rich. But if I exposed the fraud, the entire company would implode. The SEC would freeze everything. The IRS, the Department of Labor, everything Declan had ever touched, including our joint assets, our home. My money would be seized. He would go to prison, and I would be left with nothing. I pushed my chair back from the desk, the low hum of the server in my office suddenly feeling loud enough to wake the dead. The elation of discovery was gone, replaced by a cold, metallic dread. This was not the vindication I had craved. This was a prison. We live in Illinois. A community property state. 2 words that I used to think of as a comfort, a sign of partnership. Now, they were the bars of my cage. In the eyes of the law, half of every stolen dollar Declan and Juliet had siphoned from Aperture Logistics was legally mine. Every offshore account, every ghost invoice, every single fraudulent transaction, I was a 50% beneficiary. I could not go to the SEC. I could not walk into an FBI office and hand them the drive. The moment I exposed the fraud, I would be exposing myself. The federal government does not parse the nuances of a toxic marriage. They follow the money. And the money led directly to our joint accounts, to our portfolio, to this very house. The second I became a whistleblower, I would also become a target of the investigation. All our assets, this sterile marble kitchen, the cars, my own meager savings from my little job would be frozen, seized as the proceeds of crime. Declan's voice echoed in the silent room. The casual, cruel cut from the night before, "You would not survive 1 week alone without me." He was right, but not in the way he thought. He had not just insulted me. He had brilliantly, diabolically insulated himself using me as a shield. He had tethered my finances so completely to his that I could not sever the knot without drowning us both. He had made me his unwilling accomplice, his legal firewall. If he went down, he was going to make damn sure I went down with him. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the edge of my desk. Every day I remained silent. I was participating. Every time I bought groceries, I was spending stolen money. Every night I lay beside him, pretending to be asleep. I was harboring a federal fugitive. I was trapped in this gilded cage, forced to live off the spoils of a crime I had just uncovered. I had to get out, but it was no longer a simple matter of packing a bag and calling a lawyer. I had to extract myself surgically. I had to be financially independent, legally separated, and completely clean of his criminal enterprise before the bomb went off. I needed my own lifeboat, fully stocked and clear of the blast radius, before I even thought about lighting the fuse. I spent the next 48 hours in a fog of terrified focus, digging deeper into his cloud drive. I needed to know everything, their exit strategy, their timeline. And then I found it. It was not in his main internal folder. It was buried 3 layers deep in a password-protected archive. Juliet's, I presumed. The password was predictable, Aperture Summit 23. I was in within seconds. This folder was different. It was not just spreadsheets. It was a narrative. It contained a curated set of doctored emails, falsified wire transfer requests, a few cleverly edited audio files from Zoom meetings, with key phrases clipped and reordered. They were building a case. They were creating a digital ghost, a trail of breadcrumbs. But the trail did not lead to Declan or Juliet. It led to a man named David Miller. I knew David. He was a mid-level finance director, a quiet, unassuming man who had been with Aperture for over a decade. I had met him and his wife at the company holiday party. He had 2 daughters in college. He was nice. Declan and Juliet were preparing a scapegoat. The documents showed an internal audit was scheduled in 2 months. Their plan was laid out with chilling clarity. They were going to accidentally let the internal auditors discover this false trail. They would plant the evidence on David's server. They would feign shock, outrage. They would fire him, let him be arrested, and while the company and the authorities scrambled to pin the initial losses on him, Declan and Juliet would execute their final, largest transfer and disappear. I looked at the picture of David Miller from the company directory. He had kind eyes. This changed everything. My need for personal revenge felt petty, pathetic. This was no longer about a broken heart or a stolen career. It was not even just about my own survival anymore. They were going to ruin an innocent man. They were going to feed him to the wolves to cover their escape. My blood, which had been frozen with fear, now began to boil with a cold, clear purpose. This was not a divorce. It was a rescue mission. I would not just save myself. I would save David. And to do that, I had to stop being Declan's wife and start being the auditor he never believed I was. The fear from the first 48 hours crystallized. It did not paralyze me. It focused me. I stopped thinking like a wife and started acting like a hunter. I needed a plan, a fortress, and a weapon. I called it Project Kestrel. Kestrels are small, efficient birds of prey. They hover, methodical and patient, watching every detail from above, invisible to their target until the exact moment they strike. Step 1 was a firewall, a complete and total financial separation. Within an hour, I had used a non-traceable IP address to register a new limited liability company in Delaware, using a registered agent service. I called it Kestrel Analytics, LLC. I opened a new corporate bank account at a national bank, one Declan had no relationship with, using the LLC's new identification number. The mailing address was a P.O., box I rented in a different zip code. Step 2 was building the war chest. I contacted my 3 existing freelance clients. I told them I was restructuring my business, a standard practice for tax purposes. I sent them new contracts and new W-9s under Kestrel Analytics. From that moment, every dollar I earned was clean money, flowing into an account Declan did not know existed. But it was not enough. I needed capital, and I needed it fast. I began living 2 lives. By day, I was Maya, the bored, supportive housewife. The moment Declan's car pulled out of the driveway, I was Maya, the forensic accountant, cold-calling law firms and private equity groups, taking on any project I could find. I worked 16-hour days. I hunted for fraud in international shipping manifests for one client and untangled a bitter partnership dispute for another. I worked while Declan slept. My laptop screen dimmed, my fingers flying across the keys in the silent darkness. My clean capital began to grow. While my new life was being built in the shadows, my old life required a performance. The most disgusting, necessary part of the plan. I waited until a Friday night, when Declan was relaxed, a second glass of expensive Cabernet in his hand. I sat across from him at our ridiculously large dining table. "Declan," I said, my voice carefully pitched to sound hesitant, almost ashamed. "I need to apologize." He looked up, intrigued. "The other night, with the hotel charge, I was completely out of line." I looked down at my hands. "You are right. I have been stressed about my little business, and I got Jealous, I think. It was unprofessional of me to question your work. A slow, satisfied smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a man whose enormous ego had just been stroked. He reached across the table and patted my hand. "That's my girl," he said, his voice dripping with condescending warmth. "I told you it was nothing. You just need to trust me. Maya, I am the one who handles the big picture. You are not built for that kind of stress." He had taken the bait so completely. He thought the victory was his. He thought he had successfully taught me my place. The next morning, he was so pleased with my new, submissive attitude that he transferred $10,000 into my personal checking account, the one he monitored. "A little bonus," he said, kissing my forehead. "For being so understanding. Buy yourself something nice. Some shoes, or one of those bags you like." I wanted to vomit. I smiled, thanked him, and that afternoon, I transferred the entire $10,000 into the Kestrel Analytics account. His allowance, his pat on the head, was now funding the legal team that would eventually destroy him. My rage was a cold, clean fuel. The final step of this phase was securing the evidence. I could not risk keeping the real books on any device in this house. I bought an encrypted solid-state drive with cash from a big-box electronics store 3 towns over. That night, I copied everything: the 2 sets of ledgers, the JV project's emails, the audio files, and the entire scapegoat folder. I put the drive into a waterproof, fireproof pouch and took it to my new bank. I rented a safe deposit box under the Kestrel Analytics name. I placed the drive inside, along with a cashier's check for $50,000. My escape fund. I hid the key in the lining of a suitcase I never used. With my assets secured, I returned to the data, looking for the weapon. Declan and Juliet were sloppy. Their arrogance made them clumsy, and I found the fatal flaw. The shell company in Delaware, the one they were using to siphon millions. They had used it for everything, not just to receive the stolen funds, but to pay for their secret life. The hotel bills, the jewelry for Juliet, the down payment on a condo in Miami I was not supposed to know about. They thought the shell company made them anonymous, but in their rush, they had made a critical error. The registered agent address was real, but the secondary contact on the incorporation documents was a P.O. box. A P.O. box I recognized. It was the same one Declan had used for his fantasy football league 5 years ago. He had linked his hobby to his crime, but the real mistake was simpler. They were moving too much money, too fast, through a brand new entity with no business history. They had created the perfect target. They thought this company was their shield. I realized, with a sudden, chilling clarity, that it was actually their anvil, and I could use it to bring them crashing to the ground. I had the evidence, but I was still chained to the wreckage. The community property laws of Illinois meant I was Declan's legal partner in crime. I could not go to the authorities without immolating myself. The only way out was to find someone on the inside, someone with the power to light the fuse and the authority to shield me from the explosion. This could not be handled by management. They were either complicit like Juliet or too weak to act. It had to be the board of directors, but a board is a political body. I could not risk alerting the whole group. I needed one voice, the right voice. I spent an evening dissecting the profiles of Aperture's board members. They were the predictable collection of venture capitalists, tech executives, and political allies of Juliet. And then I found him. Elias Rothman, 68 years old, the last of the old guard. He had founded the original trucking company that Aperture Logistics had acquired and aggressively expanded. He was listed as an independent director and, according to Declan's muttered complaints after board meetings, was a fossil who constantly voted no on executive compensation packages. He was old money, he valued the company's reputation, and he despised thieves. He was perfect. But I could not approach him as Maya. I could not even approach him as Kestrel Analytics. I had to be a ghost. I drove to a library in the next county, connected to their public Wi-Fi through a multi-layered VPN, and created a new, fully encrypted email account with a Swiss provider. I gave myself a name, Auditor X. The email had to be perfect. It had to be precise, terrifying, and utterly undeniable. Rothman was from an era before vague digital threats. He needed one cold, hard fact. I composed the message. To Elias. Rothman Aperture, board subject. The $12 million hole in Aperture's balance sheet. Mr. Rothman, you do not know me. Your CEO, Juliet Vance, and your CFO, Declan, are gutting your company. They are running a parallel set of books. You have an internal audit scheduled to begin in 8 weeks. They are aware of it. They have prepared a scapegoat, a finance director named David Miller, and they will feed him to your auditors to cover their escape. Do not trust the report your team produces. It will be a carefully constructed lie. Attached is one item. It is the wire transfer confirmation for a payment of $250,000 from last Tuesday, coded as Logistics Consulting. The recipient is a Delaware shell company. Delaware Holdings, LLC. This shell company was incorporated 6 months ago. It has no employees, no operations, and its listed P.O. box is one I can prove is personally controlled by your CFO. It is their primary vehicle for the fraud. I am the only one who has the real ledger. If you want to save Aperture, do not reply to this email. Do not speak of this to anyone. Await instructions. Auditor X. I attached the single damning PDF. I hit send. Then I logged out, securely wiped the session, shut down the laptop, and walked out of the library, my heart hammering against my ribs. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. Every buzz of my phone made me jump. Every email notification was a potential heart attack. Nothing. The day after that was worse. Silence. I went through the motions of my life. I made dinner. I listened to Declan complain about the quarterly projections. I smiled and nodded, all while a silent scream built in my chest. Did he delete it? Did he think it was spam, or worse? Did he forward it to Declan, asking, "What is this nonsense?" I had exposed myself, and I had no idea if my one potential ally was a friend or an executioner. Then, 2 days after I sent the email, the doorbell rang. It was 11 a.m. on a Thursday. Declan was at work. I was not expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. A man I had never seen before stood on my porch. He was in an immaculate black suit, no overcoat despite the Chicago chill. He was just standing there, hands clasped, perfectly still. He did not look like a delivery driver. I opened the door, my pulse a dry tap in my throat. He was tall, with a face that looked carved from granite. He looked me directly in the eye. "Mrs. Thorne?" he asked. His voice was flat, with no discernible accent. I nodded, unable to speak. He held out a small, black, expensive-looking gift box. "This is for you." I took it. Who? Who is this from? He ignored the question. "Mr. Rothman will call at 3 p.m. Be available." Before I could form another word, he turned, walked not to a car at the curb, but to a black sedan idling 3 houses down. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like polished obsidian. He got in the passenger side, and the car pulled away smoothly, disappearing around the corner. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the box. I locked the deadbolt and leaned against the door, breathing hard. I tore the lid off the box. Inside, nestled in custom-cut black foam, was a new, disposable, anonymous burner phone. I looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. It was 11:03 a.m. I had 3 hours and 57 minutes to wait. At 2:59 p.m., my heart was a fist in my throat. I sat in my home office, the small, black, anonymous phone resting on the desk blotter like a dormant scorpion. I had been staring at it for almost 4 hours, my entire future balanced on its silent, plastic casing. Every sound in the quiet house, the tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant whine of a leaf blower felt like a hammer blow against my nerves. The clock on my monitor clicked to 3 p.m. Nothing happened. My confidence, so absolute a moment ago, began to fracture. Had I misread the signal? Was the man in the suit a threat, not a conduit? Had Rothman simply dismissed my email as the ranting of a lunatic, and the phone was a trick to trace me? The clock clicked to 3:01. The phone exploded. It did not ring. It emitted a harsh, electronic vibration that rattled against the wood with the urgency of a fire alarm. I jumped, my hand flying to my chest. I let it buzz a second time. A third. I picked it up. My palm was damp, but my voice, when I finally answered, was a stranger's. It was low, steady, and cold. Yes. There was a half-second of static, the sound of a secure line connecting. Then a voice that sounded like gravel being poured into a wood chipper. It was old, powerful, and absolutely devoid of pleasantry. "Who are you, Elias Rothman?" He did not waste a single word on hello. "I am the person who sent you the email about the $12 million hole," I said. "You can call me Auditor X." A gruff sound came down the line, a huff of impatience. "I do not have time for childish games. Madam, you have made an accusation that borders on corporate treason. You have my full, undivided attention. Now, for the last time, who are you?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment, the pivot from shadow to substance. "I am a forensic accountant, and I am the only person who can save your company without triggering a public explosion that will crater your stock price and alert the SEC before you have control of the narrative." "Everyone wants something," he growled. "You come to me with a bomb in your hands. What is your price money? You want to be paid to stay quiet." "I want justice," I said, the word tasting strange and coppery on my tongue. "And I want a contract." The silence on his end was no longer impatient. It was sharp, focused, and laced with genuine surprise. "A contract. I own a consulting firm, Kestrel Analytics, LLC. It is an independent entity. You have an internal audit scheduled to begin in 2 months. My firm will be hired, effective immediately, as an independent consultant to support and oversee that audit. I will need a retainer of $100,000, and I will require full, unrestricted, top-level administrative access to all Aperture servers. No firewalls, no exceptions." Rothman laughed. It was not a sound of humor. It was a short, sharp, ugly bark of disbelief. "You have some goddamn nerve. You send an anonymous email accusing my CEO and CFO of grand larceny, and your solution is for me to hire you, put you on the payroll. How do I know you are not part of it? A disgruntled partner in their little scheme, trying to extort me or cover your own tracks." He was smart. He was testing me. This was the moment that would decide everything. I gave him the one piece of data that was not just a number, but a secret. "Because you are a man who checks facts, Mr. Rothman. So, check this one. The shell company I named, Delaware Holdings, LLC. It is registered under the name Juliet Prentice. Go ahead and run a search on that name. You will find it is the maiden name of Juliet Vance's mother." A dead, profound, absolute silence stretched down the line. It was so quiet I could hear the faint, dry rasp of his breathing. I had just proven, in one sentence, that I was not guessing. I was not just a data miner. I knew their personal lives. I had the real books. I did not speak. I let the fact land, heavy as a stone. When he finally spoke, the gruffness was gone. His voice was cold, hard steel. "The contract will be on your desk tomorrow morning. It will be messengered to the P.O. box you listed for Kestrel Analytics. Sign it. Have it ready for pickup at noon. The retainer will be wired by end of day." "One more thing," I said, my voice hardening to match his. "This is my investigation now. The internal audit team will follow my lead, but they will not know what they are looking for. I report to you. Only to you." "That was already the understanding," he said. "You will have your access by Monday morning. Do not disappoint me. Auditor X." The line clicked dead. I placed the phone back on the desk. My hand was perfectly steady. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and methodically began to prepare dinner, the scent of garlic and olive oil filling the cold, marble room. Declan came home at 7:30, bursting through the door with an energy I had not seen in months. He was practically vibrating with amusement, ripping off his tie as he headed straight for the bar. "You will not believe the day I had," he said, pouring himself a generous measure of $19 a bottle whiskey. "Something good?" I asked, stirring the risotto, my back to him. "Hilarious. You know that old fossil, Elias Rothman, the walking dinosaur on our board." "I remember the name," I said, my voice flat. "Well, he strong-armed the board today, called an emergency vote. He is convinced the internal audit team is incompetent, that they lack teeth. He just pushed through the budget to hire some independent consultant to oversee them." I paused my stirring. My entire body went still. "Oh, a big firm, one of the top 4. He laughed. It was the laugh I hated, the one that was full-throated and dripping with arrogance. "That is the best part. It is some tiny, brand-new company, a one-woman shop, probably Kestrel Analytics or Kestrel Consulting or some stupid bird name. He is wasting over $100,000 on it. Can you imagine some small-timer is going to come in and double-check my books?" He shook his head, taking a deep sip of his whiskey. "What a complete and utter bunch of morons." I turned around, a placid, supportive smile fixed on my face. I took a clean glass from the cabinet, walked over to him, and held it out. "That sounds terrible, darling," I said, my voice smooth and supportive. "Such a dreadful waste of company money." He poured me a drink, his eyes shining with the brilliance of his own con. "To the morons, Maya, may they long continue to sign our checks." I raised my glass, the ice clinking. "To the morons." On Monday morning, I traded my freelance uniform of yoga pants and a t-shirt for one of my old power suits, a charcoal gray pinstripe I had not worn in years. It felt like armor. I drove my SUV, the one Declan believed was funded by his generosity, to the gleaming glass tower of Aperture Logistics. I was no longer a guest. I was a contractor. I was given a temporary key card and a small, sterile glass office in the accounting wing, a consultant's cove sandwiched between the internal audit team and payroll. It was exactly what I wanted: proximity. I spent the first hour setting up my workstation, my credentials already granting me the high-level access Rothman had promised. I could see everything. At 10:15, Declan strolled by. He was holding his signature embossed leather portfolio, probably on his way to a meeting. He saw me through the glass, did a cartoonish double-take, and then backed up, his face a mask of pure, comical confusion. He pushed the door open without knocking. "Maya, what on earth are you doing here?" I looked up from my monitor, feigning mild surprise. "Oh, hi, honey, I am working." "Working," he repeated, looking around the small office as if it were a prank. "Working here?" "Yes," I said, giving him a bright, earnest smile. "This is that Kestrel Analytics contract I told you about. Mr. Rothman hired my firm to assist with the audit. It is a huge opportunity for me, I have been meaning to tell you." He stared at me for a long, silent moment. The confusion on his face slowly melted into a patronizing, familiar smile, the one he used when I'd balanced the checkbook. He actually chuckled. Your Kestrel Analytics." He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "Well, isn't that something? My little wife, the consultant. I am just here to help the internal team, look over their processes," I said, deliberately downplaying my role. That's adorable. Maya." He was genuinely amused. "Well, knock 'em dead. Try not to get too lost in the big league numbers." He winked, then strode off down the hall, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. I went back to my screen, my face a perfect mask of neutral professionalism. The fox was in the hen house, and the head fox thought he was petting a kitten. I heard later, from a secretary in the executive wing, that Declan had retold the story to Juliet. "You will not believe this," he had said, loud enough for half the floor to hear. "Rothman hired my wife. My little Maya. She's our expert auditor. Isn't that just perfect? She'll poke around, file a report, and be home in time to make dinner. We have nothing to worry about." Juliet, I was told, did not laugh. Her instincts were sharper. She was a predator in her own right, and she did not like another one in her territory, no matter how adorable. My days became a meticulous performance. I sat in on internal audit meetings, asking simple, predictable questions. I reviewed low-level expense reports. I made suggestions about software inefficiencies to the internal team. I was a quiet, slightly overpaid consultant, but at night, the real work began. Long after Declan was asleep at home, I was logged into the Aperture mainframe from my home office, using the credentials they had so helpfully provided. I was no longer looking for the lie. I had that. I was building the case. I was tracing the wires from the Delaware Shell Company to their final destinations, an undeclared bank in the Cayman Islands and another in Switzerland. I was documenting the metadata on the falsified emails, creating an unbreakable timeline that proved they were created by Declan and Juliet to frame David Miller. I was building the gallows, nail by nail. After 3 days, the resistance started, subtle at first. I tried to access a specific set of server logs from the executive mainframe. Access denied. I tried to pull the archived email backups from before the JV projects folder was created. The directory was suddenly corrupted. It was Juliet. She was closing doors. She did not know what I was looking for, but she was paranoid. She was cutting off my access, one server at a time, using her CEO-level privileges to override my consultant credentials. On Friday evening, Declan came home tense. Juliet had clearly gotten to him. The amusement was gone. He did not wait until dinner. He walked straight into my home office, where I was finishing up. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, closing the door. "What's wrong?" I asked, turning in my chair. This consulting thing at Aperture, it is not working out." "What do you mean I am making good progress? The team is very cooperative." "No, Maya, you are not listening." He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose, performing the role of the stressed, patient husband. "You are in over your head. Frankly, you are getting in the way. You are bothering the executive team. You are pulling files you do not need. You are making waves." He walked over and leaned on my desk, looming over me. "Look, I know you are trying hard. It is a big, impressive effort." His voice was soft, laced with that familiar, poisonous condescension. "But it is time to wrap it up. File a simple report. Say the internal team is doing a great job, just as I told Rothman they would. Then you can go back to your normal projects, from home." "I am not finished," I said. "Yes, you are," he said, his voice hardening. "I will not have my wife embarrassing me at my own company. I will tell Rothman you did a fantastic job, that your insights were invaluable. I will put in a good word for you, but you are done. It is over." He was not asking. He was telling me. He was the CFO, the husband, the man in charge. He was putting me back in my box. I swiveled my chair to face him, my knees almost touching his. I looked directly into his eyes. The warm, supportive, submissive wife he had married was gone. He was looking at Auditor X. "I do not think so, Declan," I said, my voice as cold and quiet as the office. "I think I will finish my job." He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. He saw it. For the first time, he saw the person he was actually married to. The smile, the condescension, the authority, it all vanished, replaced by a flicker of something I had never seen in him before. A tiny, perfect spark of fear. He did not know why, but he knew, in that instant, that he had lost control. He said nothing. He just turned, opened the door, and walked out. The next phase had begun. The spark of fear I saw in Declan's eyes was a ticking clock. The polite, clueless wife was gone, and he knew it. He and Juliet were cornered animals now, which meant they were dangerous. They would accelerate their plans. They would move the money, destroy the evidence, and frame David Miller. I had days, maybe hours, before they realized what I was, not just that I was a threat. My work at Aperture was done. I had the complete, undeniable proof, backed up in the safe deposit box. It was time to execute the extraction. I used the Kestrel Analytics retainer Rothman's money to hire the most ruthless divorce attorney in Chicago. A woman whose reputation was built on dismantling the empires of powerful, arrogant men. Her name was Anya Sharma, and her hourly rate was obscene. I paid it without blinking. I met her not in her gleaming downtown office, but in a sterile conference room at an airport hotel. I laid out my situation in the cold, precise language of a balance sheet. I need to be legally and financially severed from my husband, I told her, and it needs to happen by the end of this week. It must be uncontested. Anya, a sharp woman with eyes that missed nothing, steepled her fingers. An uncontested divorce on that timeline, with assets like yours against a man like your husband, impossible. He'll fight. He'll draw it out for years. He won't fight, I said, because I am not going to ask for what he values. His money. Exactly. I don't want his money. I want my freedom, and I want the house. He'll never agree to just hand over a multi-million-dollar property. He will, I said, because I am not going to use the leverage he's afraid of. I slid a simple manila folder across the table. Anya opened it. It did not contain spreadsheets, wire transfer confirmations, or encrypted server logs. To use that would be to admit my knowledge of the fraud, to tie myself to his crime, and to bog the divorce down in a federal investigation that would freeze every asset, including the house. Instead, the folder contained 8 crystal-clear, high-resolution photographs. Last week, I explained, I hired a private investigator, also funded by my company. He followed my husband. Declan and Juliet Vance are still frequenting the Viceroy Hotel. They are not, however, using the client entertainment card anymore. The photos were damning. Declan and Juliet in the hotel bar, kissing. Declan's hand on her lower back as they entered the elevator, his keycard in hand. A clear shot of them emerging the next morning, looking disheveled and laughing. Anya looked up from the photos, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. Juliet Vance. Her husband is Marcus Thorne. Is he not the private equity billionaire? He is, I said, a very influential man, and a man, I am told, with a vicious temper and a non-negotiable prenuptial agreement regarding infidelity. He also happens to sit on the compensation committee of Aperture's board. Anya closed the folder. I see. This is not a legal filing. This is a corporate execution. It's leverage, I corrected. I want the divorce papers drawn up immediately, an uncontested split. He agrees to a full, immediate quitclaim deed on the house, transferring sole ownership to me. In exchange, I make no claim on any of his other assets, no alimony, no stock options, no cash, and no claim on his private investment accounts. Anya understood instantly. He thinks he's protecting his stolen millions. He'll see this as the bargain of a lifetime. Lose the house, save the fortune. Exactly. This is beautifully cold-blooded, Mrs. Thorne. It's Ms. now, I said. Maya, and Kestrel Analytics will be handling the billing. 2 days later, I texted Declan from my personal phone. We need to talk about us. It's urgent. Meet me at the Starbucks on LaSalle in 1 hour. Come alone. He agreed instantly, probably assuming I was coming to beg for forgiveness, to retreat back into my box. He walked into the crowded coffee shop, a picture of CFO confidence, and saw me at a small table in the back. His smile was tight, wary. Maya, he said, not sitting. What is this? I did not waste time. I pushed 2 documents across the table. One was the divorce filing. The other was a quitclaim deed for the house. His face paled, then flushed with anger. Are you insane? You're filing for divorce? You'll get nothing. Maya, I'll tie you up in court until you are begging. I will leave you with— You'll sign them, I said, my voice quiet, cutting through his tirade. You will sign both of these, right now. Or— I slid the manila folder from my bag and placed it on top of the divorce papers. He looked at it, confused. What is that? That is option 2. Option 2 is that I do not file these papers. Instead, I send this folder via messenger. One copy goes to Marcus Thorne. The other copy goes to Elias Rothman and the entire Aperture board. I'm sure they'll all be very interested in your off-site team-building exercises with Mrs. Vance. He snatched the folder. His hands ripped it open. He saw the first photograph. All the color drained from his face. This, he understood. The fraud was abstract, something he thought he could hide. This was primal. This was a bomb that would detonate his career, his affair, and his financial standing with Juliet's husband, all in one instant. He saw his entire carefully constructed world vaporize. You, he stammered, his eyes wide. Read the divorce agreement, Declan, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. It's simple. You give me the house. That's it. I walk away. I make no claim on anything else. Your stocks, your bonuses, your private accounts. I put heavy emphasis on the last words. His head snapped up. He was processing it. He thought I had found his affair and maybe a single small offshore account. He thought I was small-timing him. He was a man being offered a deal to save his secret, multi-million-dollar criminal empire, and the price was just a house. He looked from the photos to the papers, his mind, the mind of a CFO, rapidly calculating the cost-benefit. I could see the exact moment the relief washed over him. He was not just getting a deal. He thought he was winning. He thought he was pulling one last brilliant con on his stupid wife. He let out a short, sharp laugh. It was shaky, but it was a laugh. This, he said, gesturing to the folder and the papers. This is what this has all been about. The house. He shook his head, a smirk of his old arrogance returning. So that's all you wanted. You went to all this trouble. For the house. He picked up the pen I had placed on the table. I told you, he sneered, his voice low. I told you would never survive without me. You just couldn't stand to lose the lifestyle. Could you? He signed the divorce papers with a flourish. He signed the quitclaim deed. He thought he was signing away a liability. He was, in fact, signing my emancipation. He pushed the papers back to me. You were right. Declan, I said, gathering them, my hand perfectly steady. I guess I just really love that kitchen. I stood up, slid the manila folder into my bag, and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him there with his pen and his secret, stolen, and now completely worthless fortune. Anya filed the uncontested petition and the quitclaim deed with the court clerk the moment the office opened. But Declan's signature was not the end. It was the starting pistol for a race I was already losing. In Illinois, even an uncontested divorce has a waiting period, and a judge still had to sign the final decree. Until that signature was on paper, I was still his wife. I was still legally bound to his crimes. That night, I logged in as Kestrel Analytics, my access to the Aperture servers still wide open. Juliet and Declan, blinded by their own arrogance, had not thought to revoke the adorable consultant's credentials. They were too busy celebrating their victory. And there it was, in the pending outgoing wires, scheduled for execution in less than 48 hours. The big one. The final exodus. A transfer order for $15 million routed from Aperture's main operating account through the Delaware Shell Company and destined for the Swiss account in Declan's name. It was the go bag. They felt safe. The Maya problem was solved. She had been bought off with a house. They were accelerating their exit plan. 48 hours. I had until the end of business on Monday. I picked up the burner phone and called Rothman. Auditor X, he answered, his voice rough. What is it? They are moving. Mr. Rothman, the final transfer is scheduled for Monday afternoon. $15 million. They are emptying the coffers. I will call the authorities, he said, his voice a low growl. No, I said, my voice sharp. You will not. Not yet. If you do that, the feds freeze everything, the company, the accounts, and all my assets. I am still legally his wife. I am exposed. You will wait until I am clear. Clear. What does that mean? I am at the end of a legal proceeding, but the courts are slow. I need you to make them fast. My attorney, Anya Sharma, is waiting for your call. She needs an emergency hearing with a judge. She will cite urgent personal circumstances requiring immediate resolution. I need that decree signed by Monday morning, or we all lose. You are asking me to interfere with the courts. I am asking you to protect your witness and your company. Make the call, Mr. Rothman. You have until Monday at 5 p.m. Then the money is gone. I hung up. I did not wait for an answer. I knew he would do it, but that only solved half the problem. Getting my divorce decree would make me legally clean. It would not stop the transfer. It would not save Aperture's $15 million. It would not stop Declan from disappearing into the sunset. A rich man. I had to cut his escape route. I went back to the library, back to the public Wi-Fi, back to the VPN. I created a new encrypted email, this one addressed to the Compliance Division of the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, the Anti-Money Laundering Unit. My message was simple. Subject urgent flag, suspicious activity, account 987654321, to the compliance officer. This account is the recipient of a pending fraudulent wire transfer from Aperture Logistics USA, laundered via a Delaware shell company, Delaware Holdings. LLC, the account holder. Declan is the CFO of the defrauded company. This is a final transfer of stolen assets. Recommend immediate administrative freeze pending investigation. I attached one file, just one. A single PDF showing the transfer record from the Delaware company to the Swiss account. A transaction from 3 months prior. Just enough to prove the link. I hit send. I sent the anonymous tip to the most notorious, meticulous, and humorless financial regulators on the planet. I had just dropped a bomb into their system. Now, I could only wait. The weekend was a blur of silent, frantic activity. I packed Declan's remaining things into boxes, his golf trophies, his expensive shoes, his $19 whiskey. I stacked them in the garage. He had been staying at the Viceroy, no doubt celebrating with Juliet. He did not call. He did not text. He was already gone. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I was at the Daly Center Courthouse, sitting on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom 24C. Anya was beside me, her leather briefcase open on her lap. Mr. Rothman has very influential friends, she said quietly, handing me a final document to initial. The judge is squeezing us in before his 10 a.m. docket. It should be simple. He signs. We file. You are a free woman. My personal phone, the one Declan knew, buzzed in my purse. I looked at the screen. It was Declan. I let it ring twice, then answered, my voice deliberately sleepy, slightly annoyed. Declan. Maya. His voice was not the smooth, condescending baritone I knew. It was a high-pitched, panicked shriek. What did you do? I stood up from the bench, walking a few feet away from Anya. What are you talking about? I am at the courthouse. I am waiting for our hearing. My bank, my Swiss bank. He was almost hyperventilating. I got an email. My account is frozen. Frozen. Maya. Suspicious activity. Pending investigation. What did you say to them? What did you do? The courtroom door opened. A bailiff looked out. Anya Sharma petition for Thorn. Anya stood up, catching my eye. I turned my back to the courtroom, my voice a perfect imitation of confused innocence. Declan, I have absolutely no idea what you are talking about. A Swiss bank. You sound like you are panicking. You did this. It has to be you. That's my. He stopped, catching himself. He could not say stolen money over the phone. That is my private account. You had no right. Declan, I am really busy right now, I said, my voice hardening just a little. I am about to go in front of the judge. You are the one who wanted this. You signed the papers. Remember, I am just finalizing our divorce. I will be out of your life soon. Then you can go back to whatever private business you have. No. Maya, wait, he pleaded. The bailiff called again. Counselor. I hung up on him. I muted my phone and dropped it back into my bag. I looked at Anya. I took a deep breath. The panic in his voice was the first clean air I had breathed in a year. I had cut the rope. He was in free fall, and I was, finally, on solid ground. I am ready, I said. I walked into the courtroom, legally and financially, entirely, and beautifully, alone. At exactly 9 a.m. on Monday morning, the judge, a man whose time was clearly made more valuable by a call from Elias Rothman's connections, signed the final divorce decree. The clerk's stamp hit the paper with a heavy, final thud. It was done. I was legally and financially severed. The house, the marble kitchen, the glass-walled office was now solely in my name. Maya. I was safe. I walked out of the courtroom into the great marble lobby of the Daily Center. I sat on a hard wooden bench, opened the laptop bearing the Kestrel Analytics logo, and logged into my secure email account. I composed a new message to Declan's official Aperture email address. I knew he would be at his desk, staring at his screen, frantic over his frozen Swiss account, desperate for any information. The subject line was simple: the document you requested. The body of the email was even simpler. As discussed, I attached one file, not a spreadsheet, not a PDF. It was an MP3, the short, clean audio clip I had saved from that night. His voice, slick with arrogance and amusement. You would not survive 1 week alone without me. Not in this house. Not with this life. I hit send. At 9:55 a.m., I walked through the glass doors of the Aperture Logistics headquarters. I did not go to the consultant's cove on the accounting floor. I took the express elevator to the executive wing, to the main boardroom. The heavy oak doors were open. Elias Rothman was there, standing at the far end, looking out the panoramic window at the Chicago skyline. He was not alone. 2 others, a man and a woman in plain, functional suits that were the unofficial uniform of the federal government, stood near the coffee station. Rothman turned as I entered. He did not smile, but he nodded, a single deep gesture of respect. Auditor X, he said, his voice a low rumble. Mr. Rothman, I replied. I placed my briefcase on the gleaming mahogany table, took the seat at the head of it, and waited. At 10:03 a.m., the doors opened again. Declan and Juliet burst in, both of them looking disheveled. They had been summoned to an emergency audit meeting. Declan's face was ashen, his tie was loose. Juliet's composed, ice-blonde mask was cracking, her eyes wide with panic. They were clearly terrified about the $15 million transfer, the one that never went through. They stopped dead inside the doorway. Their eyes darted from Rothman to the 2 strangers, and then to me, sitting at the head of their table, in their boardroom. Juliet just stared, her mind unable to form a question. Declan looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His mouth opened and closed. Maya, he stammered, his voice a pathetic, confused squeak. What are you doing here? I did not look at him. I kept my gaze locked on the man who had hired me. Mr. Rothman, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the silent room. Thank you for retaining my firm. This is the final audit report from Kestrel Analytics. I opened my briefcase and took out the encrypted hard drive. I placed it in the center of the table. The small plastic click sounded like a vault door slamming shut. "It contains the complete parallel set of ledgers," I said, addressing Rothman but speaking to the room. "It details every fraudulent transaction, every ghost invoice, and every foreign account in Switzerland and the Caymans. It also includes the complete recovered data and audio files detailing the conspiracy to frame your finance director, David Miller. Everything has been verified, cross-referenced, and is ready for prosecution." The two agents pushed themselves away from the wall, their coffee cups abandoned. The man spoke, his voice flat and official. "Declan Thorne, Juliet Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and embezzlement." Juliet let out a choked, gagging sound. The color left her face as the female agent took her arm, but Declan did not move. His world had shrunk to a single point. His eyes, wide with a dawning, catastrophic horror, were locked on me. He was replaying the last 2 months, seeing it all in an instant: the adorable consultant, the Kestrel name, the burner phone, the divorce, the frozen account, the audio file. The pieces slammed into place, forming a perfect, brutal picture. "You," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It was all you, your auditor X." I finally turned my head. I finally met his gaze. The wife he thought he knew was gone. The woman he saw as furniture was gone. All that was left was the auditor. I slowly, deliberately, buttoned the single button on my charcoal gray suit jacket. I picked up my empty briefcase, the one with the small, tasteful Kestrel Analytics logo embossed on the leather. "No, Declan," I said, my voice cold, clear, and final. "I am the owner of Kestrel Analytics, and as you can see," I paused, letting my eyes sweep over his collapsing form. "I am surviving just fine." I turned my back on him. I walked out of the boardroom, my heels clicking on the floor. I walked past him, past the woman he betrayed me for, past the agents who were placing him in cuffs, and I never, ever looked back. Thank you for listening to this story. Please let us know in the comments where you are listening from. We would love to connect and share our thoughts with you. We invite you to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support us further by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.